Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to Behind the Story on Borderless magazine. I'm Diane Bou Khalil, Borderless magazine's engagement reporter, and today I will be talking to Nancy Vizer, who's an immigration attorney here in Chicago. So last week, the federal court ruled that the Trump administration can end TPS, which is better known as Temporary Protected Status, for 300,000 immigrants. So make sure to check out more about TPS and other critical immigration issues on our website, borderlessmag.org. And of course, while you're there, don't forget to subscribe to our weekly newsletter to never miss a story. Also this week, Borderless magazine is selling t-shirts and sweatshirts by Mexican immigrant artist Brian Herrera to support our reporting. I'm wearing the purple one myself, and they come in many colors as well. So make sure to check out the link down below in the description to purchase yours today. First of all, thank you, Nancy, so much for joining us today.
Sure. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure. To start off, can you please tell us what TPS is?
Okay. TPS stands for Temporary Protected Status. This is a status that's given to people who are in the United States. It's very important to understand TPS is never, to my knowledge, it has never been an invitation for people to come to the United States. It's designated on a particular day, and it applies to people who are in the United States on that particular day from the affected country. And it is usually for countries that are undergoing armed conflict, earthquake, flood, drought, epidemic, or other environmental disaster. If the country is unable to adequately handle the return of its nationals, if the country has specifically requested the designation of TPS, or there exist extraordinary conditions in the country that prevent nationals from returning safely. It's always been, or the way it was written, it was intended to be temporary, but it can be redesignated. So it's designated each time for anywhere between 6 and 18 months. And it can be redesignated over and over again if the country still has the same conditions or other conditions.
Mm-hmm. And what makes a person eligible to be a TPS holder?
So for a person to be eligible to get TPS, they have to be in the United States, as I said, at the time that it's designated. They have to demonstrate that they've remained in the US since that time. So for example, it may be designated today, but people have a 6-month period of time to submit their applications. Usually it's 90 days or 6 months to submit the applications. So they would have to demonstrate that they haven't left the United States during that time. And then they have to demonstrate that they're from that country. So they either need to have a passport or a birth certificate to show that they're from the country that has been designated.
Mm-hmm. And so what can someone with the TPS designation, what can they do and what can they not do?
So a person with a TPS designation, the most important thing in general is for them to get employment authorization. Normally when people flee their country, they may flee with the clothes on their back, or generally they're coming from conditions where they don't have a lot of resources. So it's very important for them to get employment authorization. So, so that's part of the application package. When they submit their application for temporary protected status, they'll include employment authorization. Very often they can also get a travel document, which allows them to visit their country and return to the United States. And that is kind of a double-edged sword. If they're getting TPS because their country is undergoing civil strife and it's dangerous to go there, generally they're not going to want the travel document. But if they've fled their country, let's say there's been an earthquake and the country's, let's say, been leveled, maybe someone had a family farm And now there is no farm, or even if there is a farm, the infrastructure's gone, so there's no roads and they can't get their produce to market. So generally they may end up in the United States. They're sending money home to their family, and they want to travel and see their country. And the earthquake was months ago. There's not the same danger. So they would want to have the travel document to be able to see their family. Now, what TPS applicants are generally not eligible for is to, let's say, move up the immigration ladder, to get permanent residence, to get US citizenship. They would need a sponsor to get these benefits. TPS applicants, though, generally have an imperfect immigration history, let's say. So I think we're going to get to the list of countries, but one of the biggest contingents of TPS beneficiaries right now is from El Salvador. I think there's something like 270,000 of them. And in general, most of them enter the US illegally. They came in the late 1990s when there was civil wars going on in El Salvador and in other Central American countries. They entered the United States legally and illegally, rather. They came across the border somehow. That fact makes them ineligible for many immigration benefits, or almost all immigration benefits. So until they can come up with a way to cure that, which can be very difficult, they're not really eligible. So they just have to keep renewing their TPS year after year after year.
Okay. So you mentioned that TPS can't really create a path to citizenship or residency. Does it create a path for a green card? Because I know that a lot of TPS holders reside within the United States like for more than 2 decades even.
Mm-hmm. So a green card is really the same thing as permanent residence. I should have been more clear about that. So the TPS beneficiaries, because they entered illegally, the way the immigration law works, they in general can't have an employer sponsor them for permanent resident, but they can have, if they enter illegally, what I'm going to discuss is something that has just changed in the last 2 to 3 weeks. So it may be challenged. Up until 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was true that if they got a travel document, they would apply for that once they had been approved for temporary protected status. And they would get permission to go back to their country, as I discussed, return to the United States with that travel document. That travel, the fact that they enter the United States legally, used to make them eligible for permanent residence, and this has been true for over the 20 years that I've been doing this work. If they entered lawfully with that travel document, their immediate relatives, which is a term of art, were able to sponsor them for permanent residence. An immediate relative is a US citizen spouse or child over 21, or it can be if the person, the TPS beneficiary, is under 21, it can be a US citizen parent. It's rare for the TPS beneficiaries to have a US citizen parent, because if they had one, they would not have had to enter unlawfully. They would have had a different way to get status to begin with.
So TPS was established in the 1990s. So I want to ask you, why is the current administration wanting to end this?
That is the subject of litigation. So in 2017 and 2018, or late 2017 and early 2018, there was a series of decisions, as several of the countries that had been designated for TPS for many years were coming up for renewal. For example, Sudan had been designated in 1997 because of an ongoing civil war, Nicaragua and Honduras in 1999 because of Hurricane Mitch, Haiti in 2010 because of a terrible earthquake that shook up most of the country, and El Salvador also because of an earthquake back in 2001. So most of these people, or every single one of them from the Central American countries, they've been here since the late 90s because they had to be in the country when they were designated for TPS. The Haitians have been in the United States since 2010. And they've been here all that time. And TPS was renewing and renewing and renewing. The actual term is redesignated every 18 months. What happens is the Department of State who's on the ground in the affected countries, they'll issue a report. They'll see, has the country put its infrastructure back together after the earthquake? Is the civil war ongoing, and so on? And they'll send a report to the Immigration Service. And then the Immigration Service will use that report, that's based in the United States now. They'll use that report to make a decision about whether TPS should be redesignated or not. So 2 years ago, the case that was just decided by the Ninth Circuit Court was at the lower level court in California. And that court said that they reviewed the government's decision to not redesignate. And they came up with, the complaint listed numerous reasons why the decision had been incorrectly made. And that included the White House putting pressure on the Department of Homeland Security to end temporary protected status, the fact that the President of the United States had expressed animus towards some of the TPS countries. He had called them a word that I'm not sure I'm allowed to say in this context, but S-holes, the S-hole countries. He had said Mexicans are drug dealers, criminals and rapists. He said immigrants from Haiti all have AIDS. Central Americans are all gang members, and he had warned the European Union nations to watch themselves because immigrants were coming into their countries and they need to be careful about that. So they said that the decision very likely came from the president putting pressure that no matter whether these people could safely return to their countries or not, we don't want them here, was the feeling.
And did you, throughout the years, have there been previous administrations trying to end this program? What makes Trump's administration a little different? I know you mentioned that he emphasized in 2017, 2018, by putting pressure.
So yes, I have been doing this work for about 20 years. And about the time that the Central American countries, right, I had been doing this work for 6 months or a year, maybe, when the Central American countries were designated for TPS. And you were never sure every 18 months that it would be renewed, but it always was, and there has never been an issue. So to me, it is a change in the way the government is acting, and I can't think of another reason other than what the litigants in these matters have said, that it's coming from the top down, and it isn't based on the actual circumstances that led to the TPS designations. I don't have a better explanation for it.
Right. And does this mean anyone with TPS will be deported after this ruling?
So luckily, no, because the ruling, my understanding is that it will be appealed. It was decided by a 3-judge panel. It was 2-1 on that panel. And my understanding is that the nonprofit organizations that brought this lawsuit is going to try to appeal to an en banc panel. In other words, to get the entire Ninth Circuit to look at the decision and to look at the case and come up with a different decision, hopefully. So this is going to take some time. It would certainly, and also, they don't immediately start deporting. I believe they're still going to give them another year to get their affairs in order and leave the country. So during that year, the litigation is going to continue. We'll see if there's a new administration. A new administration may find reasons to redesignate these countries. So, you know, it's hard to say, because I mean, it's hard for me to say. I'm not in that position. I know where I'm going to be living a year from now. I would say to people who are affected like this, it's not time to panic yet. It's certainly unsettling, but I think there's hope that this will be turned around still.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And so we have a reader from Chicago who has a question for you. She asks, is it dangerous for TPS holders to travel outside the United States now, given this decision?
Theoretically, TPS beneficiaries can still get travel documents and can still return to the US. I would say it's a little more risky than it has been. There's always some risk in any immigrant, unless they're already a permanent resident or green card holder. There is always some risk in travel, and I would say it's increased a little bit from what it's been. Theoretically, they can still travel. I would not want to be the one to say to someone, yes, you can definitely travel and come back safely, but it should still be safe to do so.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, if someone is a TPS holder watching right now, what is your advice to them? What should they do?
I would say continue life as they have been living it. As I said, they still have another year. No one is going to force them to leave for another year. And I think that there will be an appeal. Like I said, this is what I've heard through the grapevine. There will be an appeal. So I would just advise them to continue what they're doing, have faith that that things will turn around.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Nancy, for joining us today. Yeah, thank you. Everyone, Nancy Vizer is an immigration attorney in Chicago, and we were talking about the recent TPS decision. So thank you, everyone, for watching. Do you have any questions about your immigration status? You can send me an email at diane@borderlessmag.org, and we will try to answer your question in a future video.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.